that up. All right, welcome to Bothell City Council's for April 21st tonight. So the purpose of tonight's special meeting is to provide an update of the city's COVID-19 response and address a few items requiring city council action and discussion. So first, I just want to remind everyone that we are all remote and we're calling in with WebEx. So tonight we do have video with everyone present on the screen. So hi everyone, it's great to see everyone's faces. So due to the governor's stay home, stay healthy proclamations under 20-05 and the governor's proclamation 2028 regarding open public meetings, and in consideration for the health and safety of our council members, staff, and the public tonight's meeting will be held remotely. So the video of this meeting will be streamed live as well as recorded and available for later viewing on the city's YouTube channel. So tonight's visitors' comment portion of the meeting will be in writing only. Comments submitted in writing by 3 p.m. today have been forwarded to all city council members and will be part of the record. So at this point, we'll take a moment to take roll call of the council members on the call. Please say here when the city clerk calls your name.
Mayor Olson.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Zorns.
Here.
Councilmember Thompson.
Mute.
Councilmember McAuliffe.
Here.
Councilmember McNeil.
Here.
Councilmember Dorr.
Here.
Councilmember Agnew.
Here.
Thank you.
So in addition, we have the following staff members in attendance: City Manager Jennifer Phillips, City Clerk Laura Hathaway, and remotely we have City Attorney Paul Byrne. Welcome. Are there any staff members I've missed? If so, please identify yourself. I'm not seeing or hearing anyone. With the video now, it seems a little more apparent on who's here and who's online. So we may have some public that call in, but I don't see anyone at this moment. And for all the council members, please remember to keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking. And so lastly, before we begin, I'd like to reiterate some of the guidelines. At the appropriate times, I'll be calling on each member by position number order, asking if they wish to speak or ask a question. I'll ask you to raise your hand when when you do have input or comment. I'll pause at the appropriate time so that you can indicate that you want to speak. And again, please remember to mute your microphone when you're not speaking. So the first item on the agenda is the meeting agenda approval. So please note that tonight's meeting agenda is final and only adjustments considered are the consent items wishing to be pulled for discussion. If anyone wishes to pull an item, please indicate by raising your hand now. Deputy Mayor Zorns?
Yeah, I would like to pull item AB 20-051.
So we'll pull AB 20-051.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councilmember Thompson?
I would like to pull AB 20-049 and 20-050.
All right. I think that takes care of our consent agenda then. Oh, there's one more? All right. All right. So, all right, so moving along with the city manager's report, we'll get to the consent agenda afterwards. But we have the city manager report, and we will have some slides that the city manager will be presenting, and we'll have questions and comments after her presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I wanted to provide the council and the community an update on our COVID-19 response, as well as an update on our financial situation that's clearly being impacted by COVID-19. We're going to put up some slides, I hope. Maybe. Here we go. So I did an update on our COVID-19 response 2 weeks ago at the council meeting. Our emergency communications center continues to operate. We are focused on ordering supplies and our coordination efforts, as well as documenting our costs associated with responding to the COVID-19 crisis. So if there is an opportunity in the future to be reimbursed for any of our costs related to responding to this emergency, we would be eligible to do so. Supplies continue to be in short supply, but our logistics team has done an incredible effort of getting out there, using every resource possible to try and get the equipment and the PPEs necessary for our staff to be safe as they're doing their jobs. As of today, 0 City of Bothell employees have tested positive for COVID-19. So I believe the efforts that we've done from a work standpoint, and hopefully the efforts that our employees are doing at home of social distancing, physical distancing, and taking care of themselves, our efforts have been fruitful, and our entire staff remains healthy. We are beginning to discuss recovery and reopening. If you had the chance at 5 o'clock today, the governor addressed this very briefly for about 10 or 15 minutes in a press conference. I'll discuss that later in my presentation as it impacts our revenue forecasts. So let me walk you back a little bit in time. About halfway through our biennium, so at the end of 2019, we had done an estimate of where we thought our budget was ending up for the remainder, for the entire 2-year biennium budget. We had talked about the fact that we had some savings, so staff has been working really hard to identify areas of savings. We had some vacancies, so we had some unexpected savings. We're also getting the additional revenue from our medical transports. But we also had to do some adjustments. Our sales tax, we did an adjustment down of our sales tax and our utility tax adjustments. Those calculations were made in the summer of 2018. And in the end turned out to be a little over optimistic, so those had to be adjusted down. We also have not sold Lot A, which we had used as a balancing mechanism of one-time monies to balance an ongoing budget. We made that decision consciously. We are in contract negotiations with a nonprofit for an affordable housing complex there, and we're giving them the extra time to do their due diligence. So the council agreed to wait, and hopefully this sale will work out. But at this point, we don't anticipate the revenues from the sale of that property to come in anytime in 2020, more likely later in 2021. And some additional expenditure cleanup. Ultimately, we identified a little over $900,000 of an operating deficit. But we felt as things were tracking, and we had saved some money in 2019 and had some additional revenues, that we didn't need to do a budget adjustment, and we would continue to closely track and monitor and report to the council how our biennium budget was coming along. Well, then all of a sudden, COVID-19 hit. Next slide. So what we've done is we've tried to attempt to look at what potential revenue losses we're going to experience. Now, this is something the nation and the world is experiencing, whoops, one less, is experiencing with us. There you go. And so in a very short period of time, we've tried to work on identifying what impacts COVID-19 are going to have on our revenues. This is a very, very difficult thing to do, and I can tell you cities around the nation are struggling with this. It's something incredibly unique, something we've never dealt with, and really happened so quickly and so aggressively. We're all trying to figure out how the COVID-19 is going to impact us and the economic fallout from it. So what we did is we took a look at our sort of our major revenue sources. If we looked, we don't have the time to look at every revenue, but we know we have some major revenue sources. So we took the time to review those. So sales tax is our major revenue, our largest revenue source. And so we have taken a look at those and estimated the construction and hospitality and food industries, which are heavily hit through the closures that we're experiencing now, that the governor has put in place to keep Washingtonians healthy. We estimated that for a 3-month period, we would receive only 20% of our normal revenues under construction. and for the remaining 6 months, we would receive about 80%. So we're taking a reduction there. Hospitality, food, and beverage, again, over the 3 months of the closure, only receiving 20% of what we normally would, and then estimating for the next 6 months, 80%. Seeing what we've learned over the last couple of weeks and based on what the governor said today, I think this is relatively optimistic at this point. His comments were, we're going to start to dial, not switch the economy back on, but start to move the dial and look at a few things. And most notably, he's talking about construction projects. And I know that he's been working with a task force to look for ways to at least let the construction industry get back up and running, which obviously, as you can see, would be helpful to us. But the rest of the economy is going to take time, and certainly our community and our region's been heavily hit by this. So I would say at this point, these projections are on the optimistic side. We have to look at inflation, so we have to take a reduction for that, and then sort of some other additional reductions that we could identify, coming to a total sales tax adjustment of just about $2.1 million loss in sales tax from in 2020 alone. So we're not talking about 21 and 22. We're just talking about our projected loss of revenue in sales tax for 2020. Next slide. We're also looking at some other impacts. So development services, we believe that things will slow down a bit. So we looked at our permits and fee revenues, and we believe there'll be an impact there of about $1.4 million. Our rentals and program income, we've talked about the things that we've had to cancel, and so there's a revenue loss associated with that. The feds have also adjusted interest rates, so we're losing interest income. We've adjusted for that. And so what we're identifying right now, very conservatively, is about $4.5 million loss in revenue to the general fund for a total operating deficit of about $5.4 million. I think this is a good target number to start at. I believe that we're probably going to have to increase this number. I think the loss in revenue will be more than this. But for right now, as we try to stop the bleeding or the hemorrhaging, it's a good target for us to work towards. So keep that number in mind, $5.4 million, which is about 10% of our general fund revenue. We have to figure out how to reduce our expenditures so that we can end on a balanced budget by the end of the year. So we have less than 8 months to do that. Our beginning fund balance for 2020 was $9.8 million. If we were to do nothing at all and just allowed business as normal, costs to be as they are, and have that loss in revenue at the end of 2020, our fund balance would be $4.4 million. That is well below the council target. $8 million is a minimum. That was an old target that the council had. We recently brought new financial policies to the council, and you adopted a new fund balance target of 90 days of operating expenses of a little over $12 million. So clearly we're not going to make the $12 million, and there was a plan. We were putting a plan in place to ramp up towards that. But obviously a $4.4 million ending fund balance is unacceptable for the general fund reserve. And so clearly what this tells us is we have to do something. Next. If we were to continue on this path and we did nothing, by first quarter 2021, we would actually have trouble making payroll. Because of the way our revenues come in, property taxes come in twice a year, and the way sales tax comes in, we would actually have trouble paying our bills. And we have a responsibility and obligation to manage our organization, to be fiscally responsible, and so doing nothing is clearly not an option. We also don't have any set-asides for our debt. And so one of the aspects that I haven't talked about are property taxes, what happens to the housing market and property taxes, what happens to our real estate excise tax. If from what I'm reading, the market's already beginning to slow down, so when properties don't sell, the amount of our real estate excise tax also reduces. In 2019, as you know, we used real estate excise tax to pay the $3.2 million lease on our city hall. The original financial strategy put together was to pay the lease off the sale of the properties. We haven't been able to sell several of the properties, and so we've been using the real estate excise tax. In 2019, we came up $500,000 short and needed to be backfilled by the general fund. Our concern now is that the general fund will have to backfill even more of that lease payment that we're required to make, and other debt that we have to service. If we're not able to bring in the adequate revenues to be able to cover the debt, the general fund is the required backfill. So clearly, the general fund is under tremendous strain, and all of these factors basically are a call for action and immediate action. So let me walk you through to date what we've been doing. So once we've identified this initial number, we're targeting a $5.4 million reduction in expenses. So some initial steps that we've taken. The executive leadership team several weeks ago agreed to a 10% furlough. That's a 10% reduction in our salaries. We also went to the non-represented group of employees who are not represented by a union, and we asked them as well to take a 10% furlough, so they are also going to take a 10% cut in pay. We've initiated discussions with our unions, our ASME union, our guild, and our fire unions. Under the non-reps, we've also identified positions for layoffs, and we've identified potential layoffs for the ASME employees as well, and are in discussions with the guild and fire for other savings, and so that this is a team effort, and together we can find solutions on how to bridge this gap. I've initiated a travel and training freeze. There's also a hiring freeze. We have about 30 vacant positions. Those are all frozen other than absolute essential positions that must be filled to protect the community safety, or are funded through other funding sources that are not currently at risk, like grants and other sources, and also implemented an overtime freeze. Again, there are some exceptions to the overtime freeze, but we are watching overtime extremely closely, and these are some of the mechanisms that we can use to try to bridge this gap. When we talked about reductions, we're very much focused on the preservation of services to the best of our ability, to keep the safety of our employees and our community in mind, and is a top priority. And we have a responsibility to care for the infrastructure that is our responsibility, and these are our priorities along with council's goals and your priorities. So we tried to make initial decisions based on these values and direction and our responsibilities. We've also canceled all of our recreation programs, our summer camps, our concert, our 4th of July Freedom Festival, and other events where individuals gather until the order is lifted from the governor that groups can start to gather. We're not able to deliver any of these programs and services. He indicated absolutely no change in the gathering of groups, and so I suspect that this will go on for an extended period of time. We also launched the preparing of the 2021-22 budget. And so obviously this budget, we'd already talked about when we prepared the 2019-2020 budget, how challenging 21 and 22 were going to be. And we've been talking about this in the organization for the past 18 months. But now we have additional challenges. We'll be reforecasting our revenues projections for 21 and 22. And we'll be coming to the council in June with our first draft of our revenue projections and our expenditure projections so that we can discuss where we are and get additional direction on policy matters that will impact the budget and how we can balance a 21-22 budget. We'll also be coming in June with a budget amendment that will implement these reductions in costs and seek further guidance if we have to cut more to bridge the gap for the 2020 budget. From a community communication and engagement standpoint, we put out a messaging today. It was very important to me that the organization hear these strategies from me, and so I've been hosting all staff meetings virtually for the last couple of days and last week to talk about these impacts. These are obviously very impactful and frightening for an organization. So I wanted to be sure that staff had the opportunity to hear these strategies from me before they could hear it in the newspaper or out in the community. So that has been done. And so messaging went out today to our community, as well as working with the Bothell Kenmore reporter to have an article done. I'll also be presenting to the Chamber of Commerce on Thursday morning, and we'll continue our communication to our community. And again, June will be an opportunity for the community to hear more about where we are on the 2020 budget, as well as preparations for the 21 and 22 budget. I wish I had better news. These are very, very challenging times, and as I said before, we're not alone. Cities around us, cities around the United States and the world are all struggling with this loss of revenue, but it's important that we focus on the health of our community, and I know together that we'll make good decisions for our community, and we'll figure out how to balance the 2020 budget, and we'll be able to present you a 21-22 budget that's balanced as well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember Dewar.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the summary. I had a couple of questions. When you said no employees have tested positive for the virus, have they all been tested, or are they like any other person, they're only tested if they have symptoms and they go to the emergency room with presumed coronavirus?
They have not all been
Do we
tested.
know?
If I use the verb tested, I used it incorrectly. No one has tested positive in the sense that they have had flu-like symptoms and gone in and tested and had a positive test result. So we have no confirmed positive COVID cases in with any of our employees. Thank you for the clarification.
So none of that. Yeah, no problem. Thanks. I just wondered. So none of our employees are being routinely tested, such as fire, or EMS that would come in contact with constituents or members of the public.
No, we don't have any test kits as of yet. We are doing precautionary measures when firefighters come in for duty. They're having their temperatures taken, and we're looking for symptoms, but we don't have any test kits at this point.
Great, thanks. May I ask one more question?
Yes.
So I just also want to be really cognizant that as we're looking at positions and layoffs and non-hires, that we make sure that we live up to our obligations under the levies that we passed. We made promises based on the new revenue, and not only do we have a legal obligation, but I think we have a moral obligation as well to make sure that we are upholding those promises. And if we aren't, then that would merit a discussion with the community. Just a heads up.
So almost all the levy positions have been filled. There are only one or two that remain unfilled, and the fire stations have no positions related to them, and work continues on both fire stations.
Okay. Sorry, and I have one more question, and that is just that, on the, well, maybe I should, well, we didn't pull it. So on the ILA with the Snohomish County, I just wanted to, we talk about supplies, and in the agenda, it says that it's no impact on the budget, but obviously it's an unplanned for expenditure, and I didn't see it covered in your budget summary, so I just didn't know how we were handling that, or if we were waiting until the end and we know what the total expense is.
Right, so my budget summary was only revenues, so we haven't looked at additional expenditures related to our response to COVID. And the reason the item states no impact is it's just an opportunity for us to collaborate and have access to supplies. So the ILA itself has no costs. Where we purchase the supplies and through whom doesn't matter in the sense of the ILA. It's just another avenue for us to have access. But we are tracking all the costs of responding to COVID and all the supplies.
I understood that. I just wasn't sure how we took, obviously it impacts the budget at some level, and I was just curious. But you're right, we've only shown revenues, but obviously that would contribute to the deficit if it were large enough. That was my only comment.
Yes, you're correct.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember McAuliffe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In June, we'll be looking at the budget, but just tell me again, what we're depending upon is our sales tax, our B&O tax. So how does that fit into our timeline
I'm,
of the budget?
can you repeat the question? I didn't quite get, you said sales tax and B&O
Okay.
tax?
Yes. So when do we know about our sales tax and our B&O tax?
So we don't have a
And how
B&O,
does that-
we don't have a B&O tax. So we'll learn the
Right.
sales tax are 2 months to report. So we'll learn our March sales tax numbers will come in early May, and our April sales tax numbers will come in early June.
So when we look at the budget, we'll know how that impacts us.
That's correct. That's why I'm targeting coming in June, because I'll have more information for you in June.
Right, right. And, okay, so we don't do B&O, any other tax that we might get some advantage from or not?
Any other tax that we might what?
Collect.
Get an advantage from or not?
An advantage?
Is there any other tax that we should be considering?
Oh, that'll be something that will be part of the discussion in June. So I'll bring you revenue enhancing options for the council's consideration for us to explore for the 21-22 budget. There's no opportunity in the short period of time for us to implement any kind of additional revenue sources to shore up the 2020 budget, but we can certainly look at options for 21 and 22.
Excellent. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Agnew. Then Councilmember Thompson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor, and thank you, City Manager. You know, I want to commend the ELT team for taking a hit for the community. Is there any way that council members can also participate in that and maybe give up their stipend to the city or to other entities that need the funding?
So there would be 2 mechanisms to be able to do that. The Bothell Municipal Code states that council members shall receive a stipend. So if a majority of the council were to vote and were interested in foregoing their stipends, we would need to bring a very small item before council to change that code to may, from shall to may, and then you can suspend or reject your stipends. If the council as a whole is not interested, then each individual council member could accept their stipend, take the check, and then turn it back over to the city. But you'd have to take it, pay your taxes on it, and then turn it back over to the city. Without action by a majority of the council, there's no way for you to not accept the stipend.
Thank you very much.
City Manager, do you know the technical nuts and bolts of who that would go to if we were to turn it over to the city, one of our paychecks?
Generally, it goes back into the general fund. So the way we don't do programmatic budgeting in the city yet. So any kind of revenue that's received goes back into the general fund because so many departments are
Or just the
general funded.
person that it goes to?
I'm
or
sorry.
Just the actual, like, here it is now where...
It would go back to finance.
Okay.
We could go to the finance director. We could identify a person that check would
Okay.
be delivered.
Yeah, I
back
think
to.
that was the conversation
Sorry.
Councilmember Agnew and I had, were just the actual...
Got it.
Now that we have discussed that it's possible, and just like any other citizen that we've received donations from, basically we had donations for the park system. This is along those lines, and we can do something. So we're curious on the actual on where to take it. So thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Yep. No. Was that all you had, Councilmember Agnew?
Yes, that was all I had. Thank you much.
Great. Councilmember Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. I have a couple comments. We have only met once since March 3rd during a period of time in which everything has changed. Big decisions are being made and will continue to need to be made this year. And if we don't hold city council meetings, the public has no way to know what we're facing, what factors we're considering when making decisions, and what options we're exploring. Transparency is really important, and holding city council meetings is how we do that. So as we're making decisions, I hope moving forward that the public will be able to know what we're up against, what factors we're considering, and what options we're exploring before we announce really difficult decisions. And I'd like to see this continue to be explored at council meetings. This morning, the city announced a plan that involved furloughs, positions that have been identified for layoffs, and that staff would be communicating with unions soon as well. You went over some of those just a few moments ago. The public and the council as a whole have not had a chance to weigh in on these policy decisions, and they should. These decisions will absolutely affect what level of service we're able to provide and in which departments. We're facing a really difficult circumstance, and I think, if anything, we should strive for more transparency during this, not less. I understand that we're operating under an emergency declaration, but so are cities like Kirkland and Edmonds, who have used the emergency declaration to hold extra meetings so that the public can be aware of the process they're going through. Transparency is more important when extraordinary circumstances require big decisions. So I would like to make sure that we have these conversations in public. I would like City Council to be able to give policy direction on what to do with things like staffing. And I'd like to be able to discuss ways we can respond in this crisis to benefit residents of Bothell. And we just can't do that without meeting regularly. On top of that, there has been discussion about canceling the council goal setting for the year. While our goals have certainly changed along with a lot of other things, we should meet and set goals for the coming year. I am not sure in this format if I can ask my colleagues on council to weigh in or not. City Attorney Byrne, is that something that I can ask for? Is that something we can have a discussion about right now?
Technically, this is to be asking questions about City Manager about the COVID-19 update that you just presented. If that sounds more like something that you would have during council conversations. Let me check the agenda. I'm not sure if that...
We're not having the council conversations, is my understanding.
Okay. Yeah. So I think that type of discussion would be something that's... the problem that we have is that with the governor's order that we're limited as to what we can discuss. And as I think Mayor Olson said at the beginning, that these are only routine and
necessary.
Under the governor's order, we can discuss things that are routine and necessary, or that are related to the COVID-19 crisis. This talking about the budget and how we respond to it seems to qualify under both.
I think it depends on what the topic. Really, it's going to depend on what the topic is for discussion. If it is a citywide response to the COVID-19 that council wants to weigh in on, then that can be added to the agenda for sure. If it is about specific policies or specific decisions regarding staff members, I'm not sure if that is a policy.
No, but in terms of how we respond and what that looks like and where we take from and what positions might get moved around is that's not a staffing issue. That's a really a policy decision depending on what we're eliminating.
I think there's right. I think the argument that I'm hearing though is that that because we routinely engage in goal setting, because that goal setting hasn't happened, it's difficult for council to provide direction since we haven't had that meeting. And so it sounds, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're asking the city manager to, with consent of the council, to have a meeting that would be essentially make up the goal setting meeting that was canceled. So you could have your direction.
That was ancillary. Really what I would like to do is be able to provide direction for some of the discussions that have been going on internally regarding what we're going to do to try to make the budget up. And it seems like there's been a lot of planning and a lot of work behind the scenes that council has not been able to give policy direction on, and we have not had a public process for. And that's what I would like.
I think we definitely have the discussion. The concern I have, though, is that might be treading on the city manager's authority as the executive of the city. As we are very familiar with, there are three separate branches of government, the legislative and executive. And I think that staffing decisions of that nature fall squarely within the city manager's purview. But I think you are correct in saying that the legislative branch can give the city manager direction, but then it's up to the city manager to, if effectuate those goals.
So what would it look like for us to be able to give that direction? And obviously, this isn't something that's on the agenda tonight, and I don't know that my colleagues are prepared to discuss this. Is that something that we would need to call a special meeting for, or is that something that we could add to the agenda, or what does that look like?
Right. So it would definitely, as you said earlier, it could fit under COVID-19. In terms of giving the city manager that direction about specific positions, that would be something I'd like to do a little more research on. I think that would tread on the city manager's independence. It could potentially.
Okay. Well, that's simply a part of what I'd like to discuss. So, I mean, we can go over what that looks like. Can I now ask if any of my fellow council members are interested in having that discussion?
Yeah, it's part of the COVID-19 response, so yes.
Okay.
Hey, Councilmember Thompson, I think the city manager just wants to respond briefly to kind of all this discussion real quick, because I know personally, I'll just quickly say that I know personally in my discussions with the city manager, I've had lots of conversations on where that line is, because just what we're going through right now is definitely shifting where things are happening and the speed of things happening and just how it feels like they should be happening. I mean, everything is just odd and strange for myself. And so I don't know if that's what's some of your feelings as well too, but the city manager and I have had conversations about this and I struggle with it. And I think she's been very helpful with these discussions on where it is. And as the attorney said, you know, where her executive power lies to enact our policy decisions. But I'll let the city manager speak to this.
So thank you very much. So a couple points of clarification. The goal setting is not canceled. So we had to cancel it, postpone it from the March meeting. We didn't meet in March because we weren't able to under the governor's order until he gave us the opportunity to meet when he changed or amended OPMA or provided the order over OPMA so that we can have this kind of meeting without a public gathering. So as soon as we were able to do that, we re-implemented our council meetings. So we certainly felt the void as well, and trying to make an effort to not violate his order so we can continue to have these meetings. We are restricted upon what we can discuss. I agree. That's why I've made an update both at the April 7th meeting as well as tonight's meeting. The purview of the Bothell Municipal Code, I am responsible for the operations and the implementation of the budget. I may underspend. I may not overspend, but I may underspend. And with respect to the unions, I have to be very careful on what I'm able to discuss publicly because the unions have a right to negotiate, and I cannot infringe upon those negotiation rights. But what I can tell you is I've worked very hard to make administrative decisions. I've shared them with each of you individually as an information item. Again, not violating OPMA, so you're well aware of what's occurring in the organization, position by position, decision by decision. But unfortunately, at this point, I'm not able to discuss it publicly. But the decisions that I've made are administrative decisions, and they're how the organization operates, and that's as far and as deep as I can go without getting council feedback. The organization is bleeding, it's hemorrhaging, and we need to take steps to be able to put some of these things in place. What I've been able to identify to date is about $3 million worth of administrative cuts, but I still need help to get to the 5.4, which again I think is a realistic number at this point. And that's why we're targeting June, so we can come to you with realistic revenue options. Right now, this is a moving target. We're making decisions on something we don't even know what that number is going to look like. And so we need to get our expenditures ready for 21-22. We're doing that right now, recalculating our revenues for 20, 21, and 22, and to come to you in June with information to continue to work on these budget gaps and get that policy direction. I don't believe in any way that I've stepped into the policy arena. I've been very careful to do that. I'm making operational decisions. Hiring freezes, administrative decisions are under my purview. I absolutely want the community to be involved, but I also need to respect our union's right to negotiate and bargain. So I'm walking a very fine line and hopeful that I can satisfy all parties involved in this.
So a question for you then, are you essentially saying that it's not under council's purview to give policy direction on anything related to the budgetary part of this crisis until June?
You've adopted a budget for 2019-20, and I have the authority to implement that budget, and with that authority comes the ability to underspend. And that's what I'm doing, is I'm making decisions to not spend the things that have been allocated. Overspending would require council authority.
I mean, if that's the case, that's the case. As we go through and make decisions in terms of where to make those cuts and where to underspend, we are not going to do that without significantly impacting service level to the community. And having those discussions in front of the community is something I'd like to see. If that is simply impossible due to our setup, then so be it. I wish we could have those discussions more with the public.
And I am absolutely committed to being able to do that. And I agree with you. We need your goals for 21-22. Those may be far less than we've had in previous years, but to put the 21-22 budget together, I need that policy direction, and I need to understand where your priorities are. Unfortunately, we're going to focus a lot on cutting rather than adding, but the goals discussion is critical, and unfortunately, we weren't able to have it in March. So we're putting together the budget to the best of our ability based on your 2019-2020 goals, and then look forward to having you review that and give additional policy direction. I have absolutely no intent of, my intention is not to exclude the community from any of these discussions. I have a fiscal responsibility to make sure that this organization stays financially sound. I'm trying to respond quickly and doing things that I believe and I have confirmed with the city attorney are within my purview. And I will bring information as soon as I can. Again, I've briefed each council member individually on my decisions. And what's happening within the organization. The information went out today to the community, and things like canceling the summer programming, that was for the governor's order. That's not a policy decision. That's because the governor isn't allowing social programs and gatherings. So to me, that wasn't, that was a law that I had to comply with. Other than that, I haven't made any policy decisions at all.
If we look to start eliminating positions, is that something that council is going to get to speak to their goals over the coming year before we eliminate those positions?
Again, the positions, it's sort of a balancing act. It's the positions that are being identified are more administrative positions, whether that's a I don't have an answer to that right now. I don't know the timing on those decisions at this point.
Okay. Do you know when you might know if council would have a chance to weigh in on policy direction for the coming year before we make those decisions?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
You mentioned, so I originally asked if council is going to have a chance to weigh in on policy direction over the coming years before we look at eliminating positions. And you said you didn't know. Do you know when you might know?
I don't know. Part of that has to do with the labor negotiations, so I should know more over the next couple of weeks. But I don't have an answer to that right now.
Okay.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor. city manager, staff, I want to thank everybody for all their hard work and effort. We do have our weekly phone calls. I know I participate in a weekly phone call with the city manager, and we get updates. We are in an unprecedented time right now that has us doing things that we typically would not do. And having sat on council for the past 4.5 years, I can tell you that one of the most important things that we do as council members is balance our budget. And I don't think that I've heard at any point that we as council will not have the opportunity to go through that with the city manager in an open and transparent manner. I think every single one of us, all 7 of us, are thinking the same way, as well as the city manager, that we want an open and transparent process for our community. And I do not think that has changed in any way. I think that the decisions that have to be made are going to be very tough decisions. They're unprecedented decisions. Councilmember Dewar brought up making sure that we put past the levies for the fire stations and the public safety, that we continue to maintain that level of service and make sure that we're open and transparent with the community on what's going to happen there. And I don't believe, based on the conversations that I had, that we will not have those opportunities. The goals are important to us. I want to maintain our goal and make sure that we have an opportunity to talk about those. But having meetings like this, 2 meetings, and how long it's been, is tough. You know, we had a conversation about what these meetings would be like, having them virtually. And I'm struggling right now to understand how we can have any kind of a meeting and understand how people are feeling about certain things when we're meeting virtually like this. It is an unprecedented situation. So I want to commend the city manager for all the work and hard work that her and the staff have done. I can't believe that people within the city themselves have put themselves on furlough and taking pay cuts and doing what they need to do to maintain some form of level of service for our community. I commend and applaud them. We're all struggling right now. Many of us have family members that have been laid off, and it's not a typical thing that we would go through. So for me, I just wanted to make a few statements about it, say that I feel like I'm being informed. I feel like we will have the opportunity to inform our community in the future. Hopefully we will not be having these meetings like this virtually for long. Maybe we can get together and keep our social distancing and have these meetings face-to-face and in person so that we get more of a dialogue between us as council members. And I appreciate everything Councilmember Agnew for the comments that he made about, you know, giving back to our community. So to me, I just want to make sure everybody hears the voice that, you know, we're all in this together. We need to stay strong. We need to make sure that the process does not change. We have a hiccup right now, but we will get through this if we stand together and make sure that we work together. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Zorns.
Well, I suspect that this, I'm going to just be thinking out loud here, that the mental image is that the way our city is set up is when we have a crisis, we have a point man who is delegating what to keep our ship afloat, and that's Jennifer. If I'm understanding Jennifer correctly, by June, we're going to be pretty fully engaged in inventorying what we have, where we need to go, and then once we have that, we can start shaping our goals and directions when we know what we have to work with. If I'm misunderstanding that, that's a very broad brush, but that's the mantle that I feel like we're wearing right now. And if I'm misunderstanding that, someone clarify.
Jennifer, I think.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Mr. Mayor, but is Councilmember Thompson still on the call?
Yes, he is. Can you see him? Councilmember McNeil?
I cannot.
All right. Well, we can still see him.
Still here.
We still have our full attendance that I can see. So yeah, no, everyone is here still. Jennifer, I think these are hard times, lots of moving targets, lots of information is changing. I think you've earned the latitude to do what you need to in these during our declaration of emergency. I trust that you'll bring forward the information as we need it, you know, in our weekly conversations, in your email updates. I do voice the same desires that I think our whole council is saying, that just the transparency. I think you can feel just our lack of getting together, that we're yearning and just feeling that we haven't been together and have this opportunity to do what we can for the city. So, I mean, I look forward to see what we can do in the month of May. Whatever we can do in June, it sounds like we'll really start hitting the pavement with some hard data. But in the meantime, if there's anything that we can do, I look forward to conversations to see what we can do to make these meetings as productive as possible. I'd still like to have these meetings to continue any sense of normalcy that we can, and slowly turn that dial back up, as the governor is saying, you know, find those pieces where we can plug ourselves back in. But yeah, so yeah, please, you know, keep up what you're doing. These are trying times. I feel that we're just all trying to do what we can for the city of Bothell in our own ways. Did you have anything further? All right. All right, so.
Mr. Mayor?
Who was that?
Mr. Mayor? It's Rosemary McCullough.
Yes, Councilmember McAuliffe.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I tried to send you the message that didn't work. You're hearing me now? Right?
Yeah, I don't want to circle back to any further comment. I think everyone had their round about their turns.
I agree. I'm just saying, thank you for your comments. I think they're appreciated.
All right. Well, thank you. Well, let's keep this moving forward. So there's council committee reports. Does anyone have anything that they want to report out to the council? Raise your hand if you do. All right, seeing none. So we had the visitor comments up next in our agenda. I didn't see any that were submitted.
We had one comment submitted from, I believe, Julian Lowe regarding PSE.
Oh,
and the
yes.
services they have. That was all forwarded to the council. I believe that was forwarded on either yesterday or Friday.
Yep.
And that's made part of the record as well.
All right. Thank you. So then on to the consent agenda. So you have to remind me. So we pulled those items. So we'll do the consent agenda first.
So yes, so we have pulled Council Member or Deputy Mayor Zorns pulled AB 20-051, and Councilmember Thompson pulled AB 2049 and 2050. So
Correct.
we will be voting on the one and only left, which is
AB
2052.
All right, so Councilmember Dewar.
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Councilmember Agnew.
I second that.
All right, great. We have Councilmember Dewar making a motion with Councilmember Agnew seconding to approve the consent agenda. The city clerk will now read a roll call vote.
I'm going to read this in by position number. Deputy Mayor Zorns, please say yay or nay.
Yay.
Councilmember Thompson.
Yay.
Councilmember McAuliffe. Councilmember McAuliffe, can you unmute your mic and state yea or nay, please?
Still on mute, Rosemary.
Councilmember McAuliffe, we can't hear you. Please unmute your mic. Can you give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down, please? Okay.
Thumbs
that's
up.
a yay. Thank you. Councilmember McNeil?
Yay.
Mayor Olson?
Yay.
Councilmember Dorr?
Yay.
And Councilmember Agnew?
Yay.
Passes 7-0.
And now I can say yay. I'm muted.
Thank you. Passes 7-0.
All right, better late than never. All right, thank you, everyone. So on to Agenda Bill 2049. That was pulled for the asphalt paving. Councilmember Thompson, you pulled this one?
I did. I had a question as we are obviously in the middle of a budget crisis. I was curious where the funds for this, it says it's in the payment preservation program. Is there a possibility that we could put this off, use that money for our current crisis and do this next year, or due to where those funds are coming from, is that not possible?
That's not possible. This is coming from the Safe Streets and Sidewalks levy, so they're designated funds specifically for this for this program.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. No other discussion on that one. I'll be looking for a motion. Councilmember Dewar?
I move the recommended action.
Councilmember or Deputy Mayor Zorns?
Second.
All right. We have a Councilmember Dewar with the motion, Deputy Zorns with the second. Let's see, let me see what that is. So approve the contract with Central Paving for the 2020 asphalt patching project in the amount of $243,420. The city clerk will now read roll call vote.
Deputy Mayor Zorns, please say yea or nay.
Hold on.
Hold on. I believe there needs to be an opportunity for discussion,
Yes, that's true.
correct?
Does anyone have any discussion on the item? All right, seeing none. City clerk. Thank you, City Attorney.
Deputy Mayor Zorns, please say yea or nay.
Yay.
Councilmember Thompson, yea or nay.
Yay.
Councilmember McAuliffe, yea or nay.
Yay.
Councilmember McNeil, please say yea or nay.
Yay.
Mayor Olson, please say yea or nay.
Yay.
Councilmember Dorr, please say yea or nay.
Yay.
Councilmember Agnew, yea or nay.
Yay.
Thank you. Passes 7-0.
All right, great. On to Agenda Bill 20-50, crack seal. Item here. Deputy Mayor Zorns? No?
Mason.
Oh, this
I
was
pulled
made.
this one.
Councilmember
Same
Thompson again?
question.
Same answer.
Yeah, same question. Are these levy funds?
Yes, it is. It's coming from the Safe Streets and Sidewalks levy.
Perfect. I have no other questions.
City Manager, I know this item came in quite a bit lower than the engineer's estimate, and in the discussion, there was mention of some advancements that they made to why it was. I mean, could you just speak to that, or?
I'm not a subject matter expert.
Okay.
I couldn't do that.
All right. I think it was in an email response. I
wouldn't want to misspeak. That's
okay. All right. Well, I noticed that the amounts were significantly lower, and so I think that the company sounded like it was using some new techniques and equipment out there. So I think it was just something I wanted to point out, that we have good contractors out there that are using the latest techniques to be as efficient and spend the tax money as wisely as possible. So, all right, that's what I had on that. So we'll need a motion for this one. Councilmember Thompson?
I move the recommended action.
Councilmember Agnew?
I second that.
All right, so we have the motion by Councilmember Thompson, second by Councilmember Agnew, with a motion to approve the contract with Huizenga Enterprises LLC for the 2020 crack seal project in the amount of $118,367 and change. Any discussion? Seeing none, City Clerk will call a roll call vote.
Deputy Mayor Zorns, please say yea or nay. Councilmember Thompson?
Yay.
Councilmember McAuliffe?
Yay.
Councilmember McNeil?
Yay.
Mayor Olson?
Yay.
Councilmember Dorr? Councilmember Dorr?
Sorry, yay, I thought I pressed the button, it didn't work. Thank you.
Councilmember Agnew?
Yay.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, great. On to AB 20-051. Let's see. So the approval of the contract supplement with number 1 with KPG for construction management service. Deputy Mayor Zorns.
This one got my attention, and I asked Jennifer some questions, and part of why I wanted to pull it was to just have public comment on it, and then to see if anybody else had some things that they wanted to add to it. The reason why I pulled it was that in April, a year ago, we approved a $400,000 budget for KPG consultants to help with consultant work. And we've had 6 since then, so a full year from there, we've had 6 task orders that have consumed $365,000 of that. So I have some questions that I'm just going to fire out, and Jennifer graciously put some information together, so I'm kind of putting her on the spot here. First question is, where do these funds come from? And can Safe Street funding help with any of this consultant work?
So these
Where do we pull this money out of? Where do we pull this money out of?
It's in the
Where does this
capital.
money come?
It's in the capital projects budget, so it's something that the council approved as part of the 2019-2020 budget. You approved the capital projects along with that. There's very little, if any, general fund monies left in the capital facilities plan. Most of it is grants monies or monies coming from other sources that are specific for capital projects. So again, this wouldn't be something that we could not do and move towards the operations of the general operations of the city.
Okay. Is there any way that Safe Streets could help with the street portion of the consultant work?
The Safe Streets and Sidewalks money, it's a 9-year levy, and it's been specifically programmed. So the staff has estimated how much revenue is expected to come in over the 9-year period, and there's a full project plan that's been identified. And again, it's similar to the
Lost audio on you.
I'm sorry, what?
Oh, sorry, guys. I don't know if you can.
I can hear you.
We can hear you, Jean.
Okay, fine. All of a sudden, I had little circles on all of your faces, and it was catching up, buffering. Sorry about that.
So all the projects have been laid out. So remember, there's a major portion of the Safe Streets and Sidewalks levy that's for operations, and then the projects. So if you take money from Safe Streets and Sidewalks and you put it towards another use, and I don't know if this is an eligible use under that levy or not, you're taking away from projects and deliverables that we committed to delivering to the community under the Safe Streets and Sidewalks levy.
Okay, so you're right, and as I'm sitting here looking at the 7 projects, none of those, except I don't think curb ramps would have been part of that. But I do see the projects that are the future orders that are there. We've got crack seal, slurry seal, asphalt that we're looking to have a consultant be a part of. And I'm not entirely. That's not, that's not my expertise at all. But when we start talking about slurry seal and asphalt patching and crack seal, isn't that part of Safe Streets?
It may be. I don't know which projects are under the Safe Streets and Sidewalks levy or not. And I don't know the source of all of the funding for this contract, but this is the project management and oversight and inspections for these projects. So this isn't the actual work. Someone has to manage these projects, and we do these on-call projects. We do these on-call contracts so that we can manage our work most effectively. When the grants come through from the federal and the state governments, sometimes they come through in large bulk, which means we'd have to hire a whole group of people. And then sometimes the grants slow down, like we anticipate with what's happening with COVID-19. We expect state and federal grants for infrastructure projects to slow down. We'd have to lay off a whole group of staff. And so these contracts provide that flexibility for us to ramp up and ramp down as the grants come in for these different infrastructure projects. I don't know the specific source of funding for all of these, but these are the projects that staff is looking ahead that we would like to do, either have funding for, are seeking funding for, are starting to apply grant applications to, and need the consultant services, the project management inspections to help with those projects. So none of these are committed. If none of these projects move forward and there's inadequate funding for these projects, this money wouldn't be spent for these consultants. It would only be spent if the money comes in to be able to do the projects. We then would use this consultant to assist with project management and inspection. Okay,
so quick question. Are some of these projects, are they outside the scope, independent of Safe Streets and Sidewalks? They're in other parts of the city? Is that why they might be listed here? Because I know we're focusing on schools, areas surrounding schools.
Well, the area surrounding the schools were for the sidewalks.
Right. Okay. Okay. You're right. You're right. And streets are independent of that.
Right.
Okay. It just seems like, anyway. All right. So my second question is, why have we spent almost all of the $400,000 by April 2020?
Because we've been busy.
That's kind of a verbal summary.
So we just estimate an amount. So these on-call, again, it depends on how many grants we receive and how many projects we're able to do, weather dependent, whether the bids come in and we're able to do projects. So clearly, up until now, we've been able to do 6 different projects, and we utilize their services. And as you look into 2020, we're identifying the projects that we'd like to do for 2020 and identifying the additional consultant services that we need to support these projects.
And I do notice that there are 9 projects that are slated. That's how they came up with the $350,000. Is that right?
That's correct.
And I'm looking. It took a year to do 7, and we're talking about 5 or 6 months to do 9. Are these just smaller projects?
I don't know the size of the projects. What I do know is we look ahead and look at what grant opportunities are available. So some of these projects may not. So again, this is an on-call list. So the engineers look ahead and say, okay, what projects are on the list? What grant funds are available? What funds are available? And they go out and they seek funding for these projects. Half of these projects may end up not being funded, which means half of this money wouldn't be spent because the project doesn't happen. Maybe grant funding comes flowing in and we're able to do more projects. So this is really a planning. It's a planning document to say these are the things we want to do, we could do if we're able to identify the funding for it. And so we want to be ready with a consultant contract so that funds are available. So as the grants come in and we can kickstart these projects, we're ready to go to construction, then we have the on-call contract in place.
Okay. Thank you. That's the total of my questions. I don't know if anybody else has any questions or comments.
Councilmember Thompson.
Yeah, hi. I just had a question. You answered a significant amount of my questions about this through chatting with Councilmember Zorns. But so these are essentially if grant funding comes through, then we can spend this. The packet says that while many projects have ceased operation in light of the pandemic, there are projects that meet the exceptions and that we can do. It seems like if we need, I'm doing a really bad job of asking a question. If we do not need the consultants to oversee these projects, do we have to use the consultants in order to do the projects?
We always try to use staff first, but if staff capacity isn't available, we would then turn to the consultants. The consultants are always our second choice.
Okay, so if we approve this, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to spend the money on the consultant. It's just that we have the consultant at the ready in case staff is tied up when an opportunity presents itself with a grant.
That's an excellent summation, yes.
Okay.
Gold star.
That's my question.
Councilmember McNeil.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for that clarification. Great question, Councilmember Thompson. My question is this something that most cities typically use consultants for?
For this kind of work?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Again, it helps level out. So I think even large cities do this, but it helps. It's a very efficient way. So we do an RFQ for the consultant services. Then we have these firms on call, and then we can call them. So when a project comes up, we can call them. We limit the amount of procurement time. It's an efficiency. It saves taxpayer dollars, and the consultant can do the targeted work that we need them to do. And this is very, very common in our industry. Again, the amount of staff we would need to ramp up to be able to do projects in good years when grant monies and other monies are available, and then the next year potentially half that grant money could go away. We'd be laying people off, and then the next year potentially we'd have to ramp up again, and those would be huge inefficiencies. And so this is a very efficient way to do business.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Councilmember McNeil, I can speak to this. This is what my day job revolves partially around in the past, but yeah, cities, states, Sound Transit, counties, they typically have these contracts that not only just the manpower or just the horsepower to get projects done, but also technical expertise that we might not have on staff that just lends us to have that ability to do some of these projects or do it in a more effective way. So yeah. All right. Any other questions? If not, I'll look for a motion. Deputy Mayor Zorns.
I move that we approve the contract supplement number 1 with KPG for construction management support services in the amount of $350,000.
Councilmember Agnew.
Second.
Councilmember Agnew.
I'll second or third that.
Yep. Please remember to have your microphones on mute and wait to be called. So, all right, we have Deputy Mayor Zorns with the motion, Councilmember Agnew with the second. Any discussion on the item? Seeing none, City Clerk will take a roll call vote.
Deputy Mayor Zorns,
Yay.
Councilmember Thompson,
Yay.
Councilmember McAuliffe,
Yay.
Councilmember McNeil,
Yay.
Mayor Olson,
Yay.
Councilmember Dorr,
Yay.
and Councilmember Agnew.
Yay.
Motion passes unanimously 7-0.
All right, great. Thank you, everyone. So that gets us through our agenda for this evening. And that is the extent of our agenda. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening. Stay safe and stay healthy. It's great to see everyone's faces. Can't wait till we can do this in person again. Have a great night.